When it comes to the kaiju movies, everyone talks about the big boys. You've got Godzilla, Gamera, King Ghidorah, but surprisingly, there's one little lady that, I don't know, maybe not so little, that stands beside them, or more accurately, floating over top of them, because it's Mothra. This winged whopper has had almost as impressive of a run as the Big G himself, and hey, I don't see Ghidorah having his own movie now, do I? So now let's take a look at her timeline and see if it makes any sense at all, or find out if her continuity has as many holes as my wool sweaters. Our Lady's Tale begins back in 1961 with Mothra and starts with helicopters flying over an island called Infant Island, saving some shipwreck survivors, and even though they were in an area of high radiation, they're completely free of any of its effects. So they form an expedition to head there to determine why. And there they discover unusual plant life, some kind of hentai nonsense, and then two tiny little ladies who sing to them. And then, Japanese men in blackface who I guess are supposed to be natives. They go back to the mainland, and their expedition leader has a background where he traveled to the Amazon in 1954, so we're at least past that, and the villainous Nelson goes back to the island and kidnaps the twins. The natives call upon Mothra for help, revealing this giant egg, and then there's this calendar page on the wall for January of 1961, so that's presumably when we're set, and Nelson has turned the twins into a live show, which they don't seem that opposed to. I mean, they just get right into it, singing their little song and everything. This guy also has a January 61 calendar up, so they're consistent with it, and Mothra is born, but she's this little larva thing and starts to swim to the mainland, destroying this ship along the way. Oddly, the newspaper reporting it seems to say that it's 1959, and they attack the caterpillar. There's this day planner that has a date on the side, and it's in Japanese, but I was able to use a translator on it, and it says Wednesday, February 15th, which is how it fell in 1961. So that holds up, and we're like a month later now, and in the background of the office, the wall calendar has also changed to February, so hot damn, I respect this film's commitment to their timeline. Little larva attacks with all weaponry useless, eventually building a cocoon against Tokyo Tower. They think they kill her, but nope. Instead, she hatches into this beautiful woman right here and takes flight. And here's some weird footage. When getting some shots of people looking up at Mothra, there's some blatantly obvious blue-screened people. Like, did they not just have the capability to shoot people outside or something? Nelson is killed in America, and Mothra lays waste to whole sections of town, and our human characters use bells and island symbols to draw her in, and turn over the twins, and then they return to Infant Island in peace. Her story continued in 1964 with Mothra vs. Godzilla, which oddly was released in the US as Godzilla vs. The Thing. And there's a big typhoon off the coast of Japan that washes a giant egg ashore, which causes this guy to stand there and like gnash his teeth. Like seriously, look at how on edge this dude is. They don't immediately peg it to Mothra because keep in mind, no one saw the egg in the first one. And when greedy corporate guys get their hands on it, the twins appear and they say that Mothra wants the egg back, and people know who that is, so it's definitely in the same continuity as the first. And there's a lot of debate about giving the egg back to Mothra or making a theme park around it. You know, the obvious two choices. But then the Big G shows up, popping out of the sand. Like, how did he get there? Was he sleeping under there? The last that we saw him before this was in Godzilla vs. King Kong, which ended with him out to sea. But now he's just like chilling in a big old sandbox? So the humans decide to ask Mothra for help, and they go to Infant Island where there's weird skeletons like what is this turtle thing? It's moving, so is it only a skeleton? The natives are now bright red, which is better than being in blackface, but oh no, it's because they've they've changed to having them be more Native American influenced. So it's red face? The chief says that they trusted humans once but were repaid in treachery, which is possibly talking about the first movie, but I guess he could also be talking about the events earlier in the film. But she agrees to help out even though she's close to dying. The two have their fight, and even though she puts up a good fight, Mothra dies. Luckily, the egg hatches and twin larvae emerge, but they go up to fight the Big G, webbing him up in silk and knocking him into the ocean. This seems to convince everyone the danger is over, even though it's probably only a matter of time before he gets loose, right? And the larvae just swim off. Now, there's no apparent date in this one, but it's really only loosely connected to anything else, so let's place it in real-time 64. She also appeared later that same year in 1964's Ebirah, the three-headed monster, and they say that it's January, so we're definitely into a new year now. And there's this princess who has some really snappily dressed guards, and she jumps from her plane before it convincingly explodes. They find a meteor, and then there's this calendar on a wall. Now, it's too far away to read any numbers on it, but you can see there's 31 days and where those days lay. Now, they said it's January, and that's how the day is lined up in January of 1964. So that seems like when this is said, which puts Godzilla vs. Mothra in 63 then. The twins show up on a TV show, and they're like celebrities basically, and they say that one of the larvae died, like off-screen, co-star of a movie, and then just gets a quick throwaway line of its death. They're even like, "Thanks for asking, but one died."
Sadly, she died.
The surviving one is still a larva, so not much time has passed, so the last movie would have been pretty late 63 then, and Rodan bursts out of a mountain, and then Godzilla appears at sea. And there's a lot of time spent with that princess being swapped with a creature from Venus and men trying to assassinate her, like it's the bulk of the movie. God and Rod fight, and the meteor hatches, revealing King Ghidorah. There's an ad up here for the 1964 Summer Olympics in Tokyo, further reinforcing our date, and it's realized that the king is the biggest threat, so it comes down to Mothra convincing G and R to team up to fight him, and shows up in larva form to witness this amazing rock tennis match. She manages to convince them, which they manage to do in between this thrilling assassination storyline that everyone cares about a whole lot. More rocks are thrown and they beat Ghidorah down so bad it just flies off into space. And we actually end on Mothra, who never advances past larval stage here, heading back to Infant Island. Our winged lady didn't reappear until 4 years later with 1968's Ebirah, Horror of the Deep, which was put out in the US as Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, and originally wasn't going to have Godzilla in it. It was supposed to be the Japanese King Kong, but they switched in the G.
Yata is not yet dead.
Because Yata is forever. So a young guy goes out to look for his brother, who was presumed lost at sea, and the giant crab thing Ebirah appears to them, destroying their boat, and they end up on an island. These terrorists there are taking slaves from Infant Island, and thankfully they've toned down the blackface considerably. Mothra is here now fully in moth mode, and the twins are here, now recast, and the Big G is also here, snoozing away. Our heroes use lightning to wake him up, and he fights the big lobster with what else? Rocks. There's this whole touching moment between Godzilla and a native woman, and between this and the electricity sea, it's pretty easy to see how this was their version of Kong. It doesn't even seem like they changed the script even really. The G destroys the terrorist space, and there's a final showdown with Mothra finally getting involved in like the last 5 minutes of the movie. Like, she has very, very little to do with this one, and it seems like she's gonna fight Zilly, but just kind of blows him away and then saves everyone. There's no date in this one, so let's stick with real-time 68. In that same year, Destroy All Monsters was released, which was like the monster battle royale. And the voiceover in the beginning tells us that we're in 1999, although the original Japanese version says that it's at the close of the 20th century. At this point, they say that all of the monsters are now living together on Monster Island, including Mothra as a larva again. So, sometime between 68 and 99, the adult form of Mothra died again, and this new version was born. She's kept on this island by the use of this gas, and a mysterious force takes over, and the monsters start appearing throughout the world, causing mass destruction. And Mothra is seen in Beijing and destroys a train, marking a distinct evil turn. Turns out that these aliens called the Keylocks are responsible, and their intentions are to take over Earth. And later, Mothra is seen destroying a subway station, and after a series of fights, the humans are able to regain control, gathering all the monsters, and Mothra is one of the first on scene to attack the Keylocks. But they've called Ebirah, and it's an all-out brawl. The Keylocks are destroyed, and the monsters return to the island, and Mothra is among those hanging out, and that closes the door on the Showa era monster. Her next appearance was 24 years later in 1992's Godzilla vs. Mothra: The Battle for Earth, the fourth big G film in what is known as the Heisei era. It starts off with a computer screen telling us that we're set in 1992, so thank you for that. And a meteor is headed for Earth and crashes, waking up Godzilla. And at the same time, an egg appears. Some more computer screens give us a more exact timing of December 15th, 1992, so it's almost Christmas, and we head to Infant Island, of course, and they eventually encounter the twins, now called the Cosmos. They say that 12,000 years ago there was an advanced civilization on Earth and had a guardian in Mothra, but Earth got pissed, like the planet Earth got so mad at people that it created Batra to wipe them out. Now, with the climate in peril, the Earth has brought it back, so way to go, movie. You kind of have me rooting for Batra right here. Larva Batra appears, as does Godzilla, and geez, so does Asian Christopher Lee. Mothra hatches, and it's the larval form, which looks not too different from the classic version, and a three-way battle begins. It ends in a standstill, and Mothra once again having to rescue the twins from human captors, with the military attacking her until she cocoons herself against the Capitol building, and she eventually hatches into her full imago form. But so does Batra, and he's got the advantage with these laser beams, which is pretty unfair. The two decide that Godzilla is the bigger threat to the Earth, so they team up, and Mothra and Bats take on the Big G by dumping a Ferris wheel on him, but Batra gets chomped on and then blasted, which kills him, so they dump G in the ocean and mystically seal him there. Finally, Cosmos says that there's going to be a big meteorite that will destroy the Earth in 1999, so she's off into space to try to destroy it. 2 years later, that was followed up in 1994's Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, which starts with a quick shot of Mothra flying into space, and it's mentioned that it's a year after the last film, which was Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and that took place in 1993, so we're in real time still, and it's 1994. That's the only appearance of Mothra in this one, though, and she's presumably on her way to stop that meteor, and that's her last appearance in this Godzilla run. However, 2 years later, she got her own movie back with 1996's Rebirth of Mothra. And there's this logging company that unearths a giant fossil and break the seal on it. And our lady is here along with the twins. And she's got an egg and a little tiny Mothra for the girls to ride on. There's also a bad fairy lady with a little dragon getting into some shenanigans, and a little baby Mothra with laser eyes, and it's told that Desghidorah is inside that rock, sealed in by their ancestors, and it's pretty clear from the lack of mention of other monsters or Godzilla, plus the fact that Mothra is still on Earth, that this is in a different continuity than we've already seen, and this is a reboot of sorts. It's also pretty apparent from the designs and silliness that it's intended more as a kids' movie than before as well. Desghidorah is reborn, and they call up Mothra, who they say is the last remaining one outside of her egg, and she's very weak from becoming a new mother. She arrives to duke it out, and it's a fairly similar design to that from the Godzilla run, and the egg hatches amid a musical number. Like, Mothra always gets a musical accompaniment, but not usually this J-pop-ish. The larva also has a similar look, but some modifications to make it look more jointed, and when Mom Mothra is hurt, the little dude springs into cocoon action. Ghidorah is different, and it makes very different sounds, and has 4 legs instead of the king's 2, and is missing the wings. They all fight for a while until Mommy Mothra succumbs to her wounds, sinking into the ocean. Des gets those wings, and the giant 3-headed death dragon that's destroying the country now can freaking fly while raining down destruction, and this is how it's announced.
It seems the monster's now taken to the air.
There's a calendar up on the wall of the hospital telling us that it's 1996, so we're in real time still, and little Mothra, called Leo, cocoons during a music video. Leo emerges sporting a new look, and is Leo a guy? Is this the first male Mothra? They fight it out, with Giddy being locked back away, but the evil Ebirah escapes. But I guess Leo is a girl, because they ask if they can ride her? So I guess that answers that, unless they just didn't know. She fixes all the plant life in the area, so hey, Leo, maybe head to the countries with food scarcities and really help save the humans, huh? They followed that up 1 year later with 1997's Rebirth of Mothra 2, which opens with hundreds of tiny Mothras heading to Earth, and Mal and Laura are back, as is Leo. And there's these weird starfish things floating around, and this little kite thing they call Gorgo. Ebirah is back too, and Gorgo has healing powers, and we see a computer screen that seems to say 97, or that's what my translator app says. So we're 1 year later, and a new monster arises named Degarla, and the lost island of Nirai Kanai rises from the depths. So Leo pops into action to fight Degarla. Leo gets Starrowed, which knocks him out of commission, and on the island, the ancient princess appears to protect their treasure. As the island falls apart, they use the energy of Gorgo to help Leo, destroying all the starfish and transforming her into Rainbow Mothra, and then changes again into a dolphin moth hybrid. Is this real or like a drug-induced fever dream? No, it's Aqua Mothra, and she fights Degarla underwater, changing again into like nanobot Mothra and going inside the big beast, I guess killing it from within. The island temple blows up, but then turns into this castle. I have no idea what is going on here, because now it's water and Mothra flies through it. This movie's like stream of consciousness. I mean it. The movie ends with them giving a whole Earth to one of the children. A whole tiny Earth. Like, whatever. The trilogy was completed the following year in '98 with Rebirth of Mothra 3, and Ebirah's on Infant Island, but the twins are there too. She steals something called the Elias Triangle, and there's a meteor that crashes down, and the twins investigate, saying that King Ghidorah is here. They're right, and he apparently captures children, like makes all of them vanish, so Leo springs into action, now back to being non-rainbow oriented. KG is keeping the kids in this egg thing, and the two fight, but Leo kind of gets his butt kicked, and then there's hentai tentacles, so thank goodness this is a kids movie, because scenes like this usually don't lead to anything good. Realizing she has no shot, Leo becomes Lightspeed Mothra that looks suspiciously like Aqua Mothra with different colors, and goes back in time during a musical number, and Laura goes into a coma. Mothra, now in the dinosaur era, with some awesome puppets and stop-motion guys, and prehistoric Ghidorah is here too, and they fight again. Belvira switches sides and Leo manages to get the better of Cage and dumps him in a volcano, which causes him to disappear from the present, but doesn't reset the time stream or anything since the kids are all still there. The bubble's just gone, which is a really weird way for time travel to work. If killing KG in the past wiped him out from the present, would he have never been here? Wouldn't this timeline cease to exist as well? Or shouldn't the kids just blink back home to where they were before they were even taken? Anyway, in the past, Leo's lumped and Dino Mothras are here because this isn't getting any less weird, and they cocoon Leo, but in the present, a portion of Ghidorah still exists and fully regenerates and recaptures the kids. So much for that entire subplot. Leo then emerges from the time cocoon, I guess it has just always been there. They just cocooned him in the past and he was there for millions of years, and he emerges as a translucent armor Mothra and makes short work of 3 heads, disintegrating him. Leo goes back to normal and the sisters are reunited and fly off into the sky. There's no date in this one, but the others were in real time, so we'll assume this one is too and place it in 98. Her next appearance occurred 3 years later, back in the Godzilla universe, but this was at a point when the Big G was mostly making movies that were unconnected to each other and had no set continuity. And this one was 2001's GMK, Giant Monsters All Out Attack, and starts with a guy saying 1954 was half a century ago, so we're sometime around 2004. And he says that Godzilla attacked, so the original film was in continuity here. He also says a few years ago, talking about the 98's American Godzilla film, says that it was a monster that looks like Godzilla but wasn't him. There's a letter dated May 14th, so we're in May, and we get a peek at the Big G. Baragon also shows up, and a group of teens trying to kill a dog get larvaed as Mothra makes her grand entrance. This guy reiterates that Godzilla hasn't been seen for 50 years, so it seems like it is 04, a few years ahead of the time of release. And it also seems like Baragon, Mothra, and Ghidorah are guardian monsters, good guys whose mission is to stop Godzilla. And I think this is the first time Ghidorah has ever been a good guy. The Big G finally shows up and kills Baragon, and then finally, at about an hour in, Mothra shows back up, crawling out of her cocoon and sporting the best look for the character so far. She cruises over a pair of similar looking girls, the closest we get to the twins here, and she now shoots stuff from her tail. And Ghidorah shows up and they have what can best be described as, let's see. Oh yeah, giant monster all out attack. Mothra is destroyed by Godzilla, blasted into energy, which she is able to divert to the Big King G, who then becomes supercharged. The two continue to battle with our gal no longer in the picture, although her spirit makes a short appearance near the end, and it's left to the humans to destroy the big guy, which they do. She showed up again 2 years later in 03's Godzilla Tokyo SOS and was one of the few films from this era to have any connections. It was a direct sequel to the 02 film Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla and picks up from that one, and they're repairing Mecha G. They give us the date, letting us know that we're in February of 04, so this is actually set in the same year as GMK. Miss M makes her appearance fighting a couple of jets, and then this one actually acknowledges that the original Mothra is in continuity as well, and brings back the character of Chujo, played by a returning Hiroshi Koizumi, and he meets the twins again. He says they're relatives of the original, and then they previously met 43 years ago, which was 1961, reinforcing that date, and they let them know that Mechagodzilla has to be destroyed, and Mothra will protect the Earth instead. She shows up sporting the classic look, and there's this giant dead turtle here, like are they killing Gamera off camera or something? They do the whole attracting Mothra by placing a symbol on the ground, thing that they did in the original, which gets her attention. And fun to note that since only the original Mothra is in continuity here, they still view her as a form of enemy, since the last time they saw her, she was destroying Tokyo to get the twins back. She fights Godzilla, getting pretty damaged, but at the same time an egg hatches, birthing a new larval form, and hey, it's twins again! They swim to the mainland, doing their web thing, but the full-size version is destroyed in order to save the day, her second appearance in a row in which she sacrifices herself to save the day. In the end, Godzilla is cocooned and dumped in the ocean, with the twins returning to Infant Island. Mothra would return the following year with 2004's Godzilla Final Wars, yet another film from the era in which sort of gives us back some continuity, although it's unclear. It's apparent that the first Godzilla movie happened, as did other kaiju movies. The opening credits gives us these counting dates starting in 54 and going through the eras, and interestingly the final date that we can see is 2004, and it's by itself, so I think it's supposed to be isolated for a reason to give this as a date. So I suppose is a possibility of when this is set. In this universe, they never stopped Godzilla with the Oxygen Destroyer, so it's an alternate universe, so it's possible that it is just a parallel 2004. The twins appear on Infant Island to warn people about Gigan, saying that it fought Mothra 12,000 years ago, and meanwhile, this is how America is portrayed in Japanese films.
Hey man, yo, don't be touching my car! Keep your hands off! Yo, you listening?
Can't you read the sign?
Come on man, I ought to be parked here for 5 minutes!
5 minutes, 5 seconds, doesn't freaking matter, because I'm gonna bust you up.
Subtle. And we get a sort of throwback to Destroy All Monsters with an assortment of the kaiju attacking all around the world, including the American Godzilla, now called simply Zilla. They get the Big G to fight all of the monsters, taking out a bunch of them, and Mothra doesn't reappear for quite a while, like not until about like an hour and a half in, but this is a monster mash. Every monster has like 3 minutes of screen time basically, but she finally goes into action against an upgraded Gigan, looking fluffier than usual, and she, god damn it, she sacrifices herself to destroy him. Can we stop it with this, please? I mean, her death in this one is pretty glorious, but we've just watched her die 3 appearances in a row. Like, this one doesn't even end with them showing us an egg or a larva or whatever. Mothra went away for a really long time here, not appearing for another 14 years, and only showed up back in 2018 computer animated film Godzilla the Planet Eater. She gets a mention in the earlier Godzilla City on the Edge of Battle, where it's said that she was killed by Godzilla years ago, and her egg would go into the possession of a group of people who kinda looked mothish, and they talk about her quite a bit, but she doesn't really appear except for a 10-second cameo in The Planet Eater, but that's it. Now, a little earlier, it was pretty clear that Mothra had yet another appearance on the way. In the 2017 American film Kong Skull Island, there's a post-credit scene in which we see cave paintings of Rodan, Ghidorah, Godzilla, and of course, Mothra. But she would make her very first US cinema appearance in 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters, which starts off with a flashback to 2014, which was the setting of the first US Godzilla film, and they say Godzilla hasn't been seen in over 5 years, so we're right around 2019 here as well. And 11 is here, and her dad is Coach Taylor, and Mama Warren is a scientist and is there for the birth of a new Mothra in a very different looking larval form. She's aggressive when attacked, but there's this thing called the Orca that soothes her, but Tywin Lannister is a bad dude. Richard is here to figure out some sort of middle out method to the monsters, and someone who might try to bone one of them and let them fight. And you know who else is here, but I never refer to from a role she's been in because saying her actual name is way more satisfying, and it's CCH Pounder. We find out that Mothra escaped and has now cocooned herself under a waterfall, and we get bad guy Jonah's birth date of 1959, so he would be 60 years old, and someone at Monarch would love to see a merman. And then there's a whole military squad here, but thankfully there's a civilian here to point out flaws in their strategy. And let me tell you, there are screens in this movie. So many computer screens. I paused the movie like every 3 minutes looking for dates. But there really weren't any, which is funny because that usually means they want to keep the date up in the air. But I mean, they said it right in the beginning. Turns out Mom's a baddie too, and King Ghidorah is born, also the first American version of the character. Doc Vivian dies, and they show her date of birth as 76, making her 43 when she died, and then Rodan appears, also a US first. They bring up the Oxygen Destroyer, the weapon that killed the original Godzilla, and I guess Geeds can regrow a head? Other monsters appear, as does Miles Dyson, the brother from another planet, but then Mothra finally appears, looking glorious, and we get the hint of her theme song in there too. We even get a photo from 1961 with Chen's mother and the notion that twins run in her family, like she's the human equivalent of the fairies here. Mark restates the 5 years number, so we're definitely in 2019, and Mothra finally makes a full appearance, almost 2 hours into the movie. Like, what has she been doing all this time? She came out of that waterfall like half the movie ago. She ends up fighting Rodan here, looking way more agile than ever before, and finally using her little leggies for something, and then she straight up stabs that fool. But then, oh, come on! She sacrifices herself and transfers the energy to Godzilla. Yo, filmmakers, Mothra is not just like your little sacrificial lamb who only serves to juice up the big guy. This is now her 4th film in a row that uses that plot point. I guess it's interesting that the only monsters to kill her in any of the movies were either Godzilla or Ghidorah, although she does kill herself, kinda, while fighting Gigan, but I suppose you can give him that credit. Anyway, I guess Godzilla wins, killing Ghidorah, and all the monsters bow to him, like he did it himself or something, as if he didn't have Our Lady die in order to get there. Thankfully, the credits tell us about another Mothra egg, so she'll be back, and the post-credit scene reveals that there's a Ghidorah head remaining, and I hope it's Kevin, but there was supposed to be a different one shot with Chen and her twin preparing for the new larva's birth, but that was it. She didn't show up in the follow-up Godzilla vs. Kong, and there's no word of any further appearances from the character just yet. But outside of films, there's quite a few other appearances of the character. She's been on the Japanese show Godzilla Island back in 97 and 98, with both Mothra and Mothra Leo appearing, I guess insinuating that they're in the same continuity, or at least this is a new continuity in which the two coexist. And also the current anime show Godzilla Singular Point. She's also, I guess, made cameo appearances on The Simpsons and sorta maybe South Park, but she doesn't suffer from disintegration there. Interestingly, Mothra has appeared in just as many video games as she has movies, ranging from all the way back to the NES to PS4 games, although she's never had her own game, instead serving as a secondary character in Godzilla's games. Most of the games have her playable in both larval and full-grown forms. There's also a series of books that she appears in, but again, none of her own, with Mothra serving as a secondary character to Godzilla, starting back in 1996 and continuing all the way to the most current Godzilla project, Mechagodzilla, from 2018. And then there's comic books, although the way that Toho licensed their characters, she didn't appear in several earlier Godzilla runs, like the Marvel version, nor the later Dark Horse comics, but when IDW got the rights to do Big G comics, they got all the characters, and Mothra would appear in plenty of the miniseries, stemming back to 2011. But, most importantly, don't forget the classic metal tune from the band Anvil called Mothra. I'd play it for you, but yeah, copyright stuff. So there you have it. I don't even know how many movies that was. That was a lot of movies. I'm not going to go back and count. But yeah, over the course of 70 years or so, there's definitely a fractured continuity. It's not one continual storyline. There's definitely at least 7 or 8 different continuities here to cover. And for the most part, I enjoyed these. Mothra movies are pretty fun because they're mostly Godzilla movies, which are generally a good time. I didn't much care for the Mothra solo trilogy. It was a little bit too kid-oriented and a little bit too bizarre, but not in like a fun way. Bizarre. It's not bad. It just wasn't as good as the other things that were going on at the same time with other kaiju stuff. But it was still pretty good. I enjoyed it. If you guys enjoy Mothra movies, let me know down below. If you would like to see Mothra in her own solo movie again, more like the classic one, tell me that. I would love to see a modernized Mothra with some cool effects going on. Give me that outside of the Godzilla universe. Give me her own thing. I want to see that. If you do, put it down below in the comments. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you like what you see on the channel, hit the subscribe button. Hit that bell if you want notifications about when new movies are coming out, new videos. Do that. And also, if you get a chance, please check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/movietimelines. It would help support the channel. These guys do it, and they are awesome, and I thank them for it. But I also thank you guys just for watching these videos, and hopefully you'll come back and see me do another one very, very soon. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.